Hello noble ones, welcome back to my channel. This is the Metatron speaking. Now today I would like to make a video which would be a guide for all those people that would like to get into buying armor. Now the first thing that I would like to say, it's actually a question. The question being, what are you? Are you a collector? Are you a historical reenactor? Or are you a larper? Because this will completely change the kind of approach that you should have. So, let's start from reenactment. Now, of course, the one golden rule for people who want to get into historical reenactment is historical accuracy. So, of course, if you want to buy an armor that is historically accurate, you will have to have a higher and a bigger budget, because accuracy comes at a price. Now, if you're a larper, then what you're doing is you are playing, and most LARP games and campaigns are based on fantasy, so you're not completely limited to historical accurate items only. There are other things that you should keep in mind. For example, most likely you will want something reasonably light, and your armor does not actually have to defend you from real weapons, because most of the times you will face either foam weapons that cannot be said. For example, for a jouster needs to have the best armor he can find, because otherwise you could actually hurt yourself really badly. Because let's get one thing very important straight from the beginning: costume armor does not function as armor, which translates to costume armor does not defend you from real weapons. When you're a collector, and personally I fall into this category, if you collect things, you simply feel that a specific object would or should be part of your collection. You could even end up buying a pink helmet with a flower on top and an axe ditched into it, just because you like it. Now, I would like to begin from mail armor. Now, there are quite a few types of mail armor, and I'm sure that if you have been looking for mail armor and you would like to buy mail armor, you have noticed quite a few words, types, categories. For example, butted mail armor, riveted mail armor, but sometimes these are not that easy to understand what it means when they say butted, what it means when they say punched. So let's just get these categories straight and clear. This is what you call linkage type. There are three main types of linkage: butted, riveted, or welded. Butted mail armor. This that you see here is butted mail armor. Now, when you say butted, it means that the ends of the rings touch each other, but there is actually nothing to keep the rings together other than the actual pressure of the metal of the ring itself. So what this means, practically speaking, is that although it does provide some cutting resistance, it's very easy to pierce butted mail, so you will have to be very careful if you use this, and I would not advise you to use this against actual swords. So in my opinion, butted mail should be only used either for LARP or for collection. No jousting nor reenactment should be done with butted mail, particularly if we're talking about European reenactment. So the historical accuracy of butted mail, well, it's not completely unhistorical. It would be unhistorical in Europe. It was used though in Japan. So when we talk about Ksari, the Japanese mail armor, the majority of Ksari was made of butted mail, and only in certain cases they actually used other kinds of mail. It was the exact opposite in Europe. Most, if not almost all, the archaeological discoveries concerning mail in Europe is not butted, it's riveted or punched. Riveted mail armor. Now, when you say riveted rings, it means that the rings are closed by a rivet, which is similar to a nail, if you will. Now, riveted rings reduce the chance of the rings splitting open when subjected to a thrusting attack or a hit by an arrow, for example. So riveted mail is a very effective armor. A jouster or a historical reenactor should all be wearing riveted mail. And as far as LARP is concerned, well, you don't really need riveted mail when you're fighting against foam weapons, but I personally think it looks as really beautiful. But of course, it does have its cost, so it really depends on how much budget you have. Now, of course, as the name suggests it, welded mail or welded rings is another way to close the rings in order to increase their shape. The strength will depend on the strength of the welding. But one thing that needs to be pointed out is that there was no welded mail in ancient times. It's a modern technique. Historical reenactors should not consider welded mail. Larpers, it's an idea, but I personally don't particularly like welded mail. I think if you want better strength, then I would just go for riveted. It looks fantastic to me. Now, there are other things that we need to keep in mind when we need to decide what kind of mail armor we want. Weave density, for example. Of course, a tighter weave needs a thinner weapon to surpass, so will provide better protection. And ring thickness. And normally with mail armor, ring's thickness ranges from 18 to 14 gauge. So we're talking about 1mm to 1.63mm diameter wire, roughly speaking. But another thing we need to consider is also the inner diameter of the rings. Now, I would ignore anything that surpasses 8mm ID. So either 8mm or 6mm is my personal suggestion if you really want armor, which is not just a costume. 6mm means smaller rings and so stronger defense, and also a weight reduction between 30 to 35% depending on how the mail was done. Here, let me just show you the difference between, for example, round rings and flat rings. I personally prefer round rings, but you can also have sometimes mixed mail armors. And most of the times with 6mm ID mail armor, you will have it mixed. Now, sometimes you will have noticed that mail armor differs in color. You can have a natural finish, which is my favorite, but sometimes you see these mail armors that have a very bright color. Well, that is galvanized mail. Now, if you're a collector, galvanized is very convenient actually, because it prevents rust. It's a rust protection technique. However, for a historical reenactor, galvanized is not a good idea. It should completely be avoided because galvanizing mail was not done, and it would just make you look like a post. Now, but jokes apart, it's not historically accurate, so do not look into this. Of course, if you buy mail armor and you are a historical reenactor, you will have to take care of it, just like any other knight or Roman legionary in the past. For larpers, just as much as collectionists, perhaps galvanized could be a good idea if you don't have much time to dedicate to armor maintenance. Otherwise, if you want your warrior to look more realistic, then definitely galvanized should be avoided as a choice. It's up to you. Now, for the material, steel probably is the best idea. Of course, you do have the option of getting aluminium mail armor that will incredibly decrease the weight. Now, aluminium mail armor could work for some larpers, but then again, the rings are very brittle. So aluminium mail armor should only be considered for people who wish to just take good pictures. It's a costume, and the rings are so brittle that they could actually break against a foam weapon. Please keep this in mind. So incredibly light, but it is not armor. Now, I do hear that there are riveted aluminium mail armor. Of course, please keep in mind aluminium was never used in ancient times, so please, historical reenactors, stay as far away as possible from this. Of course, if they're riveted, they may not break as easily, but still, if you hit them with a wooden weapon or a metal weapon, they will break. Also, always when you buy mail armor, make sure when you measure your chest circumference, you also consider the fact that you should be wearing a gambeson underneath. Even a thin gambeson will still take some space, so please consider that before you actually choose the measurement. Now, talking about prices, you can go from very cheap Indian-made items, and in that case you could even buy mail armor, battered mail armor for 60, 70 euros, all the way up to historically accurate armor made by actual armorers, which can easily cost between 3,000 euros when it's cheap, all the way up to 10,000 euros when you really want the real, historically accurate, perfect armor, made exactly to shape your body individually. Now, considering that most people, including me, cannot afford this kind of armor, then a good in-between idea would be to have a look at Battle Merchant. That's an excellent site where you can actually find riveted, historically accurate mail for between $300 to $500, which is a good price considering the item you get. Alright then, thank you very much for watching. I hope that this video helped, and remember, the Metatron has spread its wings. Goodbye.